We'll take you now to the Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese in Perth.
On the invitation of President Zelensky to recommit Australian support to the people of Ukraine in the struggle that they're having against the brutal Russian invasion that has implications for the rules-based international order, but also, of course, is having an impact on Australians with rising energy prices, rising inflation, impact on supply chains, including on food. The struggle of the Ukrainian people against this brutal invasion is inspirational. And President Zelensky, I believe, has the support of Australians in leading his people against Russian atrocities that we saw firsthand are being committed against the civilian population of Ukraine. Here in Australia, I've had a briefing this morning from Senator Murray Watt, our Minister, but also from Joe Buffoni, the Director General of Emergency Management Australia. People on the East Coast are doing it really tough at the moment, and it is clear that the crisis is not over yet. We see, I'm advised that the rains are heading towards Hunter and the mid-north coast today. They are hoped to be easing in coming days, but there will continue to be flash flooding, and the advice remains, if it's flooding, forget it. Do not take risks. At the moment, we have 9 evacuation centres open. There are some 242 people have registered at those evacuation centres. We have made 250 ADF personnel available, 100 of whom are on the ground at the moment. 100 are on standby and 50 are there to support clean-up in areas once that commences. We have 2 helicopters that are available for night work, and they were established. They did some work last night. The catchments, of course, are full, and that means that even when the rain starts to ease, the danger will not ease for some period of days as floodwaters continue to rise. Planning is underway for the early clean-up once that's available to commence. There are some 20,000 homes without power and 1,000 homes without communications at this point in time. The M7 is closed at Glendinning, and that is causing some disruption as well to transportation in Western Sydney. We know as well that there's a significant impact going to occur on agriculture. This is the 4th flooding event that we've seen in some of these areas like the Hawkesbury in the last 18 months. And my heart goes out to people who've suffered again and again and again and again. And for many of those communities, they were also impacted by the bushfires. So I say to people, stay safe, keep vigilant, keep following the advice which is being given by emergency personnel. There are 23 councils that are receiving federal state support as a result of the decision of the state government. And I spoke to Premier Perrottet from Poland some time ago now and offered whatever support was required from the federal government. He told me that he was very pleased with the urgent action that had been taken by the federal government, and we continue to make that support available. The support's in the form of hardship grants for money for structural repairs, as well as low interest loans. We'll continue to work with the Premier, and tomorrow morning I'll be on the ground with the Premier of New South Wales examining firsthand what is occurring in those regions, and I look forward to cooperating with the Premier.
Prime Minister.
Wait, one at a time. Come on, Claire.
Flooded. Is it time to raise the Warragamba Dam, given, as you've mentioned, the catchments are once again full?
We'll get appropriate advice on those issues. Those issues, of course, are controversial. There are different views that need to be taken into account. What's clear is that we need to get through the immediate crisis is what we need to do, and then we need to examine any policy response which is required.
Minister, there's been criticism over the international travel you've done. Have you managed to strike the right balance between overseas and domestic priorities?
Well, I have attended the Quad Leaders meeting the day after the election. That wasn't a decision of mine to hold the election on May 21. That was a decision of the former Prime Minister. I attended that. I attended the NATO summit, which was important that Australia be represented there. It was important that we deal with the relationship with France and Europe, and I believe that my visit to Ukraine was important to show solidarity with the people of Ukraine. We can't separate international events from the impact on Australia and Australians. And for those people might like to say which of the events that I've attended on behalf of Australia that I shouldn't have attended. I have not had a day off for a very long period of time.
Nonetheless, Prime Minister, you are copping some criticism. Were you, in hindsight, too harsh on Scott Morrison for supposedly going missing? Even there was criticism when he had COVID of him not being at the floods from people in Labor. Have you made a rod for your own back now in terms of expectations of a Prime Minister in terms of national crisis?
People want to argue I'm not working hard, then they can argue that case.
Why hasn't a national emergency been declared yet? Why hasn't a national emergency been declared yet?
Because we take advice on those issues appropriately, and we'll continue to take advice. The Cabinet was briefed just this morning on those issues.
Prime Minister, households are going to get whacked again today with a likely interest rate. Could be half a percentage point. What's your government going to do in the weeks and months ahead, even before the October budget, to lighten the cost of living load?
Well, we know already that the measures that we supported that have an impact on low and middle income earners came into effect on the 1st of July.
Are you still planning on going to the Pacific Islands Forum next week?
Well, the Pacific Island Forum is an important event. Australia cannot remain isolated from our national interests. And I have a government that has a lot of talent and has ministers who are doing their job. This isn't a one-person show. I have a very strong team that I am very proud of, and will continue to do all of our jobs to the best of our capacity. And part of that job is to be represented in international forums. We saw what happened earlier this year when Australia dropped the ball with engagement in the Pacific. Thanks.
Yes, this is an emergency situation right now, but we are talking about people who have had to evacuate their homes 4 times. What options are on the table that your government will consider to mitigate and make those communities more resilient beyond this immediate emergency period?
Well, we will take advice and work with the New South Wales government in a constructive way. But the concern at the moment is getting through the existing crisis which is there right now. We are working very effectively between the federal government and the state government with the authorities, and we will be on the ground. I'll be on the ground personally tomorrow with Premier Perrottet. Can I conclude with this? Just a shout out to all those volunteers, as well as our ADF personnel, as well as people from state authorities who've also been working so hard again and again and again through these crises to provide assistance to people. They deserve our thanks and our praise. They're continuing to do that work, and I join with others in thanking them. Thanks very much. Thank you.
All right, the Prime Minister Anthony Albanese speaking in Perth, defending his overseas travel, saying he hadn't had a day off in a long, long time. saying his government wasn't a one-man show, and he said that he'd take advice on that issue of whether the Warragamba Dam wall should be raised or not.